So I'm a clinician by background, and I started working in Wales 19 months ago now to try and introduce the idea of a workforce standard around addressing racial inequality for NHS and social care staff in Wales. I came from being a director of inclusion in NHS England and carry on working as a clinician half the time and being a work in Wales half the time. I hope none of you are uncomfortable with what I'm about to say in the next 20 minutes, but if you are, we can take it up and discuss it because there is a necessary level of discomfort some of us need to feel about what's going on. And the idea that we can quality improve our workforce stuff to make it better is just for the birds. Okay, so there's one thing I hope you fundamentally concur on, is that tweaking our inclusion programs as we have them now to be better just perpetuates the inequality that there is. We can't QI this stuff. It isn't like a clinical task you have where you have how can we make the patient flow better? How can we make a diagnosis earlier? This is a fundamentally broken system. And unless you're prepared to be revolutionary in this, you are not doing anything useful. Not all of us have the appetite to go out and fight in the front lines. Some of us need to be in the background, cooking and supporting those who are prepared to do that. So there's a place for all of us in this struggle, but there is a struggle to fight. This is not something that's going to get done by the grace of goodness from above. This is not something that's going to be sprinkled to make it better. We have to be revolutionary in our heart, or just say, actually, fundamentally, I don't really believe in this, it's not a big deal. Because the whole point about this is we're not in a static situation, as I said in my previous slide. We're in a situation where the whole idea of inclusion is regarded as a four-letter word. It's regarded as something, well, it's just, there's been for too long, these black and brown people, they've been coasting and we've been excessively nice to them, giving them jobs which they haven't necessarily earned their right to get. And it's been at the expense of quality, and that's the reason we're in a messy situation. Is not because we've had broken politics and rampant capitalism, it's because of these black and brown people who don't know where they belong and have come here and made life difficult for us and then complain about it to each other. So this whole idea that there is a woke thing that we have to resist is just, again, it's frankly deeply disingenuous. And again, anyone who feels uncomfortable with that, I completely respect your point of view. Hopefully you respect my fact that I just think that's complete arrant nonsense, and we both agree then that we have a difference of opinion and maybe we come to a conclusion, maybe we can't. That's also fine. Fundamentally, why am I saying all this? I don't want to say, I don't expect all of you to be revolutionary, but I do hope that you have the basic thing. As clinicians, those of you who are in that space, you don't take the problem and say, well, it's tricky, I don't know why everyone's dying of all this stuff, I just don't know, this has happened. You say, why are they dying? What's happening? What's the process that's occurring? What's the pathophysiology of this? What's the thing I can do to address it? And we haven't done that with racism, or in fact with inclusion problems anywhere. We've said, oh, well, let's just be nice and fluffy. Let's do some educational stuff. Let's analyze it a bit longer. Let's just rub a crystal or two here. It'll be fine. That is not the solution. That just perpetuates the problem. Okay, and you may feel warm and fuzzy. We may feel warm and fuzzy, think, oh, we're doing something useful and valuable here, but it makes the problem worse. Because the things that are happening that are a problem are exactly happening because they're designed to happen. The data that I'm going to show you now for Wales, as almost the first time it's being seen, for those of you in the room, it's the first time it's being seen anywhere in Wales, apart from to my Welsh Government seniors, is exactly what we expect to happen. Okay, it's not the odd rogue bad process, it's not the odd rogue bad HR director, it's not the odd bad nursing lead or midwifery lead. It's not. It is a systemic problem which is producing exactly the data and results it's intended to produce. Okay, so that's why a QI tweak ain't gonna work. Okay, you have to break the machine. Okay, just fiddling with it and putting a new cog in there is not going to do anything. Why did I, as somebody who sounds like I do, I'm an African man who came to this country, to England when I was in my teens. Why did I decide to come and work in Wales? Fundamentally, this is a unique document. This document, produced by the Welsh Government 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, is unique in the annals of Western history. There has been no governmental produced statement from anywhere not New Zealand, not Canada, not the other sort of other nations in the Nordic countries which have got a better record inclusion, has said we acknowledge that we have a deep-seated problem in our country that needs addressing. Now, saying that is the first step. Actually, it's the first step. Second step is to get some data. The third step is to actually implement some change. I use slides as kind of a bit of a backdrop to my ranting. So just have a look at the slides. They're just a form of kind of visual image. They don't actually tell you anything you need to particularly focus on to any extent other than just to say, illustrate the rant. But the whole anti-racist action plan was broken up into chapters around justice, education, housing, etc. The health chapter was one that that we'll be focusing on the work I'm doing here. I can't spell, as you can tell. Why do they talk about anti-racism rather than non-racism or whatever else? Anti-racism is, you hopefully all understand, that the need to be actively provoking the machine. Back to the thing I was saying earlier on. You can't be non-racist. Oh, well, the machine is spitting out these bad results, but I'm a good guy. I've got black friends, you know, and I've got an in-law who's, I think, went to Cambodia. Okay, that doesn't work, okay? You have to be actively involved in the process, and people have this. Ibrahim Kendi is kind of a black scholar, and you have to move from this area of personal fear about, you know, will I say the wrong thing? Oh God, these guys are a bit sensitive, I don't really understand where they're from, through to the whole idea of then thinking how you actually learn about this and accept the differences that we have with each other, and then try and actually do something to increase your knowledge, and then actually try and do something to change that. And you can't stop halfway along the process if you are anti-racist. And that's what's unique about the RWAP. The Anti-Racist Action Plan encourages you, in fact requires you, if you're serious, to go all the way through. Because it's potentially a matter of months, years, before we have a class action. I mean, in Wales it's called a group action. Because, you know, if you have people employed by the largest employer in the UK, the NHS, and they are subject to discrimination, why shouldn't you take out action against the NHS, against the government, for systemic racism? The data I'm going to show you shows you it's systemic. But is it unique to the NHS? So this is data, just if you equate everything to, for every £1 earned by a white UK person, a Bangladeshi person earns about 51 pence, and a black African earns about 60 pence. In terms of your wage, in terms of your domestic wage. In terms of things like house ownership and car ownership and all that kind of stuff, in terms of wealth, not your wage, but your wealth, the figures in the parallel graphs are even more striking. For every £1 in wealth, house owning, shares, whatever else owned by a white person, there's less than 10 pence owned by a black African person in this country. Okay, so just put that into context of what we're talking about. There is a fundamental capital inequality in that source. Is it unique? What's this based on? I'm going to show you some slides which say, they're meant to be part of my rant, but it's just the idea. If you are a black person in particular, because anti-blackness is at the core of being anti-racist, okay? There's a strong problem that the society has with black-skinned people, and we need to understand that. You're more likely to die once you're arrested. You're more likely to be arrested in the first place, especially if you're in a metropolitan area. The length of these graphs make a point, which I need to go through numbers. It's in education as well. You're more likely to, despite going in with the same A-level grades, not get the best degrees, not finish the degree, and not get into employment at the end of it all. Okay, this is all year upon year. This isn't a single blip. This isn't a post-COVID thing. This is systematized. Okay, so we are dealing with something. I'm giving you today for 10 minutes is to make you hopefully inhabit the position where you decide to take up arms or do the backroom stuff, but to take a position on this, as opposed to think, I'm a good guy, I'm okay, I'm not one of the bad guys. Okay, in healthcare, this is data from the staff survey. You can see that year upon year, there are countless ways in which we treat each other horribly based on our religion, our gender, our sexual orientation. But the one that's top of the list and gets wider every year is based on our colour of our skin. Okay, that increases year on year, whilst others stay static or maybe even improve a tiny bit. That gap between what happens in terms of race discrimination and every other kind of discrimination grows. Okay, you don't know how old I am, you don't know what gender I am necessarily, you don't know what my sexual orientation is or if I have faith, any of that. You don't know any of that. What you do know is that I'm a big blackish fella looking in front of you. Okay, that's what you know about me. Okay, and that may, if you have a mind, make you feel uncomfortable or make you have certain thoughts and values about what I am like. The fact that I sound like this is an interesting sort of adjunct, because if I sounded more like my mother and father did, I would have a significantly worse time from all the experiences, all the literature says. Mistakes are about medical stuff, but I want to have sick of time. I don't want to say, but I want to make on one point. People say, "Oh, this is about social class, Anton." Don't. It's not about race. It's about social class. No, it isn't. This is the rate of passing exams for medics in this country, according to your social deprivation. So, the social index 1 is the most deprived. Social index 5 is the least deprived, the most affluent. And you can see that your pass rates, if you are the son or daughter of a African minority person, black person from who's a medic, if you're from a family which is very advantaged, you are still 12% less likely to pass an exam than a white peer whose parents were the most marginalized. Okay? So this is beyond social class. This is something rooted into how we look, how we sound, and we must accept that. And we must also understand that as black and brown people, we have been a tap which has been turned on or off as needed by the workforce. As I say, in Wales in particular, we are a hugely public sector workforce. Health and social care are the biggest part of the public sector. So there's the reason we're talking about health in particular. And what you see is that the government policies have adapted. So red are the bars of year on year for what they used to call Commonwealth or colonial migration, and blue are the bars for European migration. And you can see that having black people in the health service from the time of its inception. Remember that the Windrush arrived 2 weeks after the NHS was launched in 1948. And there have been black people involved in the NHS from the very start. And you can see that when there was a boom in requiring the kind of the Blair years, there was a huge tap turned on. Visas were made easier, acceptances were made easier to get in. The requirements in organisations and health boards and trusts was lowered, so that we could bring big numbers of people in. And when it was regarded as us, we have to be now a much more European facing, that was made much harder, and the blue bars increased with time. But this tap of being able to say, we're leaking people, they're suffering, they're going to other countries, they're stopping working in healthcare, it doesn't matter, we just turn the tap a bit wider and more people will come in. So it doesn't matter how leaky the bucket is, it doesn't matter how bad the experience is, they'll just keep topping up, that's fine. And people have gone along with that. So what are we going to do about this? What are we going to try to do about this? We're trying to do something by, too many words in this slide, but we're looking at trying to understand the indicators of what experience this makes. Why is that data around deprivation that I've shown you and all those things? How can we break that down to understand what to do? So we've got these indicators we're looking at in health and social care based around 4 domains. The idea of progression and leadership, the idea of professional learning and development, the idea of being exposed to excessive disciplinary capability processes, and then the kind of cultural piece. And we're doing this across health and social care, uniquely in Wales. No other country has got this data set. We're doing this in health and social care, in our hospitals, in our primary care, and in social care. Okay, so for something like 110,000 hospital staff, and about another 120,000 social care and primary care staff. So 250,000 people, and it turns out there's about 15% of the workforce is black and Asian in healthcare. Way more than there is in the population, because there's a historic aspirational thing to go into health and social care, but also because we're bringing people in large numbers for their skills that they've learned in their native countries. And what we see, you don't have to necessarily understand about the banding system in healthcare, is that black and Asian people get stuck in the blue bar at band 5. Their progression beyond that into the multiple higher bands is halted at a very low level. Okay? And that's especially true in our hospital settings. It's there. And inevitably what that means is that there's a huge deficit in the leadership. In primary care, we don't have in Wales a single black or brown person who's a decision maker in primary care, despite having 40% of our GPs who are Asian. Okay? That is an extraordinary thing for us to own. Okay? And in secondary care, the numbers are pretty pathetic. whilst about 10% of our workforce is Black and Asian, only about 3% of our leadership is. And in terms of disciplinary capability procedures, from the data in primary care, you're tenfold almost more likely to be put through a disciplinary processes if you are Black or brown. You're eightfold more likely to go through a capability process. Okay, so there are countless ways in which the hurdles are put up there. Okay, so you can see why people don't progress, why they don't stay. You can see why they choose to leave the service. In terms of fitness to practice, is the way the social care determinants system. It's primarily a male issue in social care disciplinary processes. And my point about this is not to make you understand about social care disciplinary processes, is to show how we can disaggregate the data, and rather than just saying, oh, here's a problem that Black and Asian people face, understand it by that true intersectionality meaning. And what you see is that white women colleagues are least likely to be put through fitness to practice processes. For Black and Asian women, it's equitable in parity, but for men, especially for minoritized men, it's especially a problem. And what do we learn about the experience of professional development? Staff generally feel that they're likely to be given enough to do their jobs, same as their white peers, but the chance to progress, the chance to have access to training, to progress and be promoted, is where things really fall down, that second digit and the bold on the right-hand side. And in terms of the likelihood of experiencing abuse, you can see it's up to fourfold greater in terms of your experience of abuse. And there's a huge geographical variation. Again, don't want to show you the slides in huge detail, but there's a massive variation between Paris, North and West Wales, where Black and Asian people are comparatively rarer in the community, but where they're very prevalent in healthcare, compared to, say, South Wales, where there's more diversity on the streets, and there's still a greater proportion of minoritized people in health and social care, but not to the same extent. And so that seems to bear out, not mitigate, some of the level of abuse that's experienced by people directly from staff. What are we going to do to actually change things? How am I doing for time before I get around to too much? We can do things to change stuff. We can introduce processes where this is what I was working doing in England, I left in 2022. We could set targets, we could change processes about how we recruit into senior positions, we could change the way we do public appointments, so we take it away from that person's a good fit, that person had the right experience. Because who gets the right experience and who's the best fit? Somebody who looks like you, who goes to your choir, plays in the same golf club, joined the same rugby team as you do, not the Black or brown fella who's come in 10 years ago and has got stuck where they've got given up applying for jobs. So we've changed processes, and look, stuff changes quickly, okay? I joined at the start of the pandemic, stuff changes. There's a salutary tail in all this, which is as soon as you stop doing something, that's where we are now in 2024, the data is flat-lined, okay? So we've gone through interesting processes. It's nothing to do with me, so don't make clear, this is not, I'm just a lever in all this process, but actually changing processes to make sure you do disciplinary, you make recruitment fair, works. This is some work we did with some midwives. I don't want to move into the detail, but what we did with this is the right-hand panel. We took a group in the Midlands and said, if you want to create equality in your midwifery workforce compared to what you're seeing, you need to employ the following numbers of people. In your next cycle of recruitment, you need X number of band 6 or above Black or Asian midwives, X number of band 7 and above to get to parity. And within 2 years of doing that, they, in that region, were able to do that. And at a point now where there's been slight improvements in their maternity outcome data. So this stuff has a translatable benefit in quick time. This is, I don't want to go there before, but in Wales is Welsh data, the other two were English data. In Wales, one of those groups, all our organizations should fall in this funnel. There are some outstandingly bad organizations there. What are they doing so bad? How can those organizations learn from what's happening here? That's part of our role in Welsh Government, is to try and make it happen. Disciplinary stuff, we can change disciplinary processes radically. So we did some work with this region, the east of England, and you can see that their rate of disciplinary disparity, nearest one is equality. What we had in some organizations was 2, 3, 4, we saw 8-fold more likely in Wales to be referred into disciplinary processes if you're Black or brown. We put some processes in place on the right-hand side in that whole region and moved completely to drop that. You can see that curve for that region compared to all the rest is dramatically better and stayed better. Objective stuff works. So the whole point is we've produced, in my less hairy days, a compendium of data of what works. What does the literature tell us of what works for recruitment, for positive action, for shortlisting, for job advertising. This is a list of stuff that's there. It's available, it's public resources, nothing which it's just stuff which we've collated into that space. And from that, it's also available on the NHS Wales WRES standard. We've created an idea of what works. So we can go to organizations and say, your data tells us this problem, what you should be doing is doing the following. So fundamentally, as I wrap this up, you'll be pleased to hear, I fundamentally believe in one thing. This stuff, you need an action plan to actually show your intent. You need data so that people can't say, oh, it doesn't really happen in Wales, we're nice and cuddly in healthcare. It doesn't happen in Wales, we're lovely people, not like those English. It happens everywhere, not because we're good or bad people, but because our systems are bad. Bad, okay? So, the only thing that matters, therefore, is accountability. This stuff is not happening without accountability. The RWAP gives us the framework for how that should happen. Fundamentally, we create heat maps of our data for each of our indicators. Each of those 12 indicators, I can give you a heat map of where it's good, where it's bad, where it's indifferent. And then you know what works, that previous thing, and you just keep going around this circle until we grind away at this and make this less of an issue. Okay? So fundamentally, the idea of the WRES is to do this. We begin with data collection and we just work our way through this. And we are sort of on track at the moment to be doing what we're doing now, with organizations changing their processes. Final slide. You know I'm obsessed by James Baldwin by now. I don't think there's a chance for us to do this in a kind of abstract way. We have to face what we've had to from that first quote, and we have to do it now. Okay, black and brown people have been told for a long, long time, put your head down, just work a bit harder. Don't make any fuss, you're lucky to be here. It's much worse back there. Quiet. Okay, this can't go on, okay? And the fact that we're in a global push, we're against inclusion, as I was saying at the start, should make us redouble our efforts, or accept that this is actually good enough for us, and we are in some way, we cannot be said to be anti-racist. And we accept that we're not anti-racist, not all of us have to be, but at least accept it. What we can't have is any duplicity about, oh, we're good people, you're either part of the fight or you're not. It's easy for me to say, although I'm paid by Welsh Government, I'm outside Welsh Government, so I can be revolutionary, and that's fundamentally who I am, an activist based on data. But I present this, and I'm grateful for the invitation to present here at this forum, because I want to at least give you a perspective on why there needs to be a revolution, or accept that we can't bear revolution, it's too much for us, and we have to live with what we have, and cook with the faulty ingredients we are given. That's it. I'm sure.